Ora tu wau te pō, tu wau te ao. Tu wau ngā tatara moi, ara mai rā koutou ki roti I te papatonga rewa. Ara mai rā koutou ki roti I te puku o te whare nei ka rauro I te maro tō tātou maunga o matairangi. Ara, ko te wai tuku kiri, wai māpei, waitangi e rere tonu nei ka rauro I te whenua nei, o tia no rā, te nei ka mihi atu rā ki o koutou. Ara tēnei he uri o te atiawa taranaki whānui, ara he uri oki o Mathew Paia, o ngā te aumea, pātatarawa atu rā ki tō tātou pātāpu I tō a te aro tēnei ka mihi. A te taku titiro atu rā ki te rā ui te atu rā, ka rewa a matariki, ka rewa apuanga, ara te mātai o te tau. Nau mai hara mai rā koutou, uti anō rā tā uri atu rā ki te au wakaro kuima o kora mai wakangaro atu rā ki tua wakarere, e wakangaro atu rā ki te pō. Hara kawea mai rā I o koutou mate, hara mai te hiku, mai te rāwiti, mai te taiuru, mai te mātongatonga. Ka punipuni mai rā ki a rātau kua takai atu rā ki te ara wairua, hara koutou te pō huri atu ki te tai awa te me ki a koutou. Kai ngā rauranga tira mā o te motu nei. O tia nō rā, tuatahi mihi rau atu rā ki tō tātou mineta, Hon Nanaia Mahuta. Ara, ki a koe te tumua ki o te manatu aurere, tēnei ka mihi. Koutou te kāhui, takawainga, kawanatanga, e whakarau I ka mai nei, haramai, haramai, haramai. Haramai rā ki tēnei wānanga kōrero, ara, ki roti tō tātou a Māori. Hara mai rā ka te titiro atu rā ki te matapei, ara o tō tātou ao. O te anō rā te hina tore te kupurau ko koro kui mā koro mā wakangaro atu rā I te pō. Ara, kai ngā tau e pā uri ake nei, ko kimikimi atu rā ngā tari kāwanatanga, pēhea te huarahi mo tātou ki rungi te ura I o tātou ki roto o tō tātou au te ao Māori nei. Hara mai rā koutou, hara mai, hara mai. O tia nō rā. Ke tātou, wakaronga atu rā ki ngā kōrero, ko ngā pū kōrero tuake nei ki rungi tāta mire nei, me oki atu rā ki o koutou whare, wānanga koutou, me oki atu rā ki o koutou hapu iwi ki roti o koutou takiwa. O tia nō rā, he wānanga no, tā ia iwi kōrero, tā ia iwi kōrero. He kōrero tā te atiawa, he kōrero tā Ngāti Porau, he kōrero tā Ngāti Tūwhare toa, ara he wānanga tonu rātau. Huri rauni te motu. E hara te whakaaroko tahi. Me oke atu rā ki tēnā ko ke kōrera arangi te ita upārai. Ko tō puki amakura nō, ko tōku puki amakura nōku. O tia nō rā, hara mai ki roti tō tātou wā. Aha te aha. Ara te wiki e pāhuri ake nei, ka tū atu rā, tērā poari mo te Hauora nei. Ara, he tauira mo tātou. He tauira mo tātou o tia nō rā koutou e haere ngātahi tātou ki runga e tahi kare te tehi waka, he waka haurua ma tātou. Ko te tehi haurua, tātou te iwi Māori. Ko te tehi haurua, tā te kāwanatanga. Ara, he aha ngā kiato I hono tia mai rā atu rā e nei waka haurua nei. Ara, ko ngā wāhanga o te tiriti o Waitangi. Ara, te wāhanga tuatai, pēhea te hononga o te tino rangatiratanga ki te kāwanatanga. Ara, ngā tau tatarau atu rau, ko tahi rau, waru te kaumā rua ngā tau e pāhuri ake nei, nā te kāwanatanga I whakatakoto atu rā, te huarahi mo tātou. O tia nō rā, te wāhanga tuarua, he aha tēnei me I ngungu rākau atu rā tō mātou taonga. Te tuarua, te tuatoru, pēhea tātou e mahi ngātahi ki runga I tēnei wakahaurua. Ara, te wāhanga tua wā o te tiriti o Waitangi, ara pēhea te mate one tō mātou tikanga, tō mātou waka aere, kei raru i te maru o tō tātou au te iwi Māori. Nō reira kare e te kumiaro tēnei, te iwi kānge whakatau ki o koutou e te papa tongarewa tēnei, kamihirau atura e whakarūra hau mo te rahi i konei. O tia nō rā ki o koutou ngātari kāwanatanga, hara mai ki te whakarunga atura, kia uru toma mai rā ki roto tō tātou au te ao Māori. Ara tēnei te tono atura ki o koutou haere Māori mai kia tū wai te tātou kotahi. Nō reira, hara mai ki roti tō tātou au, he ao no tua wakarere, he ao e kōkiri ngātahi ki roto i te ao tua whakarere kei mo ia tātou. Nō reira tēnā koutou, haere Māori mai. Puria nei e te hau, oroia e te ua, whetea e te rā. Mahia ke ngā poraruraru, makere ana ngā here, erere, wairua erere, ki ngā ao o te rangi, whetea e te rā. Mahia ke ngā poraruraru, makere ana ngā here, makere, makere ana ngā here. A ki ngā ao o te rangi, nau mai hara mai ki o koutou hui, tēnā koutou, kia ora tātou katoa. I'd like to introduce you to your MC. He's been around many forms. He was very privileged to go to an amazing college known as Te Aute, but even better, he was fortunate to be in the same house as I, Rotene Whare. So in saying that, kai a koe, e hoi Julian, nau mai haramai. Just one thing for future reference, whānau, if you're going to hold a Māori hui, make sure you've got a guitar here. Kia ora tātou.
E karai kura tēnā koe. Nā koe, ka puara ake nei, pākarukaru nei, ngā kōrero, tō tātou whare kōrero, whare wānanga i tēnei rā. Te atiawa e pupuri nei te mauri o te whenua. Ngā mana whenua katoa tēnei takiwā o te rohe o tarai, ka te tūnoa mai ki tēnei whare o te papatongarewa. E tūwana e harai te mea mo te mana whenua. Ana he nahe me Aotearoa te paingātu. Tēnei ka mihi ake kia kūtau e kura tēnā koe. Tēnā kūtau kia ora mai rā tātou katoa. As kura mention, my name is Julian Wilcox. I wouldn't say I've been around a long time, could I? But thank you for that. Just a minuscule moment in time. It's lovely to see you all here. Kua ki poha poha tō tātou whare. In fact, tū ki. So there's a lot of you here. If you have some spare seats, can I just get you to raise your hand? There are some people in the back. So there's some up here. If you want to come up here, just in the front here. And then some people in the back can come in and grab a seat. Ka pai. Just some quick administrative issues just up here. Haramai. We're all whānau, we have to be. There's 300 of us here. So just some quick administrative issues, health and safety first of all. Ina oru te whenua, e mohena koutou mea hane. If there is an earthquake, usual practice, stop, drop and hold. If we have to evacuate the building, we will be guided to safety via the exit signs and via the volunteers and staff of Te Papa who will guide us out to the assembly point. and you'll be assembled at that assembly point in time. Also, if you do hear alarms and we do have to evacuate, then again we will be guided to safety. We do have a full program. We will try and stick to time as best as we can. But we also know that we are operating in an environment ko te ngārara ko whiori e kōrero hi ake nei. Now, I know some of you have masks and it is a full whare. So there are people who wanted to be here today who couldn't attend. I te mea ko pāngia rātou e te mate ko whiorina, no re nanga whakaaro a kia rātou. I won't go through the program as yet because I'm not going to insult your intelligence. You can all read. If you've got any issues around program or anything like that, then please feel free to reach out to me. And finally, can I just thank you all for making your way here on a beautiful Wellington day. Wellington is the greatest city in the world. It's also the home of the greatest sports franchise in the world, which is fact. And not just one, but two, the Hurricanes and the Tokomanawa Queens, who got a win in the weekend. So welcome to the great city of Wellington, our capital city. I'm now going to hand over to a couple of people who are going to talk through why we're here today. And Kura, I noticed your messages in your kōrero. E whāne kia tātou ki te iwi Māori, and these are things I'm sure the Minister will mention, and also when Chris gets some time later on, Chris may also mention and indeed be asked about throughout this hui. So, without further ado, I'll now hand over to the lady really responsible for bringing us here today on behalf of Diplosphere. Her name is Mathew Nico O'Brien. She's been working very hard to make sure we can all get here today. So I'm going to hand over to Maddie, who's going to explain why we're all here today at this wonderful hui, navigating a stormy world, te ao Māori perspectives. It encourages us to recall and reflect on the great journeys of kupe, of toi, of wainoake, wainoa, turi mara, I tai mai ki Aotearoa nei. What does that look like for us going forward? Nā reira, Maddie. Tēnā koe, haramai, haumai te pakipaki te iwi, Mathew Nico O'Brien.
Ngā mihi nui. Thank you very much, Julian. It's a privilege to have you here, so thank you very much for coming all the way here. Ko Damavand te maunga, ko Lasen te awa. No Irana o ku tipuna, I tipu ake ahau I Paris. Kei te noho ahau ki Poneke, ko Mathew Nico O'Brien ahau. Tihei Māori ora. E nā mana, e nā reo, e rā rangatira mā. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, kia toa. Thank you. Excellencies, members of Parliament, distinguished guests, ladies and friends, and gentlemen. That's the danger of life. I'm Mathew Nico O'Brien, the founder and executive director of Diplosphere, and it is a great pleasure to welcome you to our conference, Navigating a Stormy World, Te Ao Māori Perspectives. This is a collaboration between the New Zealand National Commission for UNESCO and Diplosphere. Welcome and thank you all for joining us today in Wellington from near or far. I also understand we have some guests coming from Australia, the Australian National University, so a warm welcome. The Honourable Nanaia Mahuta was supposed to be with us this morning, but unfortunately tested positive for COVID yesterday. Nevertheless, the Minister kindly recorded her speech while under the weather. I would also like to acknowledge the Chief Executive of MFAT, Chris Seed, who is with us today. Mr. Seed has kindly agreed to take questions after the Minister's speech. I am a New Zealander by choice. I feel privileged by, and I'm very proud of both my Persian and French heritage. And I salute here the new French ambassador, Monsieur Jerome-Leota. But I have also chosen to become a New Zealander because of New Zealand values. Values are what distinguish us. Values guide us when it comes to foreign policy. Yet, Māori and youth voices are often missing on the big international issues of the day. We at Diplosphere are a non-partisan organization with a mission to promote independent thinking and diplomacy. We shed light on world events and bring perspectives so that New Zealanders may be better informed and make better decisions. Today, Diplosphere is proud to be able to host, with the fantastic support of the New Zealand National Commission for UNESCO, the first national conference on international relations featuring voices often missing in the public debate, Māori and youth. It is especially fitting to have this discussion at Matariki, where we take stock, we understand our past, to look with hope for the future. A time of new beginnings. Matariki was used by the crews of voyaging waka to guide them across the Pacific. Today, we want to take you on a journey and explore a variety of destinations. Our first port of call is our place in the world, our values and manaki. Then we travel to sustainability and stewardship, Kaitiaki. Our next destination is the stars. We're going to talk about trade, tech, and success, Mahitahi and Kotahitanga. Sir Ian Taylor takes us to Papatuanuku. We then look out to destination 2030, our path to a better future. But last but not least, we will hear voices across the oceans from our neighbors, near or far, to Rou Hawaii. There is much mahi to be done, of course, to have Maori input into how foreign policy is shaped and fashioned. But I hope today is a spark that will eventually develop the voices of Maoridom at the top table. Perhaps even a signal for other countries with indigenous voices to take inspiration from, the same way we too have to learn from indigenous peoples around the world. Likewise for our youth, our rangatahi, who may take inspiration from today to go out and take on the world, but be it in business, in diplomacy, in technology, in trade, to express themselves and enrich our country's outlook. Too often, commentators confuse security with foreign policy, but foreign policy is more than just security. It is a reflection of our qualities as a nation anchored in the Pacific. I hope that a Pacific mindset can guide us and is given equal footing to the Atlantic one. Iwi have a teina tuakana relationship throughout Asia and the Pacific, which allows both great and small to operate equally in this cultural setting. I too have benefited through this relationship, as I have been inspired by and guided throughout my prison career by my kaumatua, Terence O'Brien, former New Zealand diplomat who's present here. All this would not have been possible without the generous support of our partners. Special thanks to the wonderful team of the New Zealand National Commission for UNESCO, in particular Vicky Soanes and Ethan Jerome-Leota, for putting belief in Diplosphere and bringing all this together. My warm thanks also to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, Amazon Web Services, the Australian High Commission, and of course, Taranaki Whānui. Last but not least, thank you so much, Kura, for leading the Mihi Whakato. And of course, thank you to our speakers and our beloved MC, who lend the mana, the time, and talent to bring us their views. Please enjoy the many networking and social opportunities offered at the conference to connect with like-minded leaders and thinkers. We are confident that we will all benefit from the discussion. Kia ora.
Tēnā koe, Mary, ngā mihi nui kia koe. Thank you for those opening statements. Beloved. Thank you for that. That's nice. Beloved. To reinforce those messages of welcome, ladies and gentlemen, I now extend the hand of welcome to our next speaker. She is the Secretary-General, New Zealand National Commission for UNESCO, and has almost a decade of experience working in the NGO sector in Zambia, the UK, France, and the US. Immediately prior to returning to Aotearoa in 2009, she also spent 4.5 years representing international movement ATD Fourth World, an INGO focused on extreme poverty and human rights. at the United Nations in New York. Please make welcome the Secretary General for the New Zealand National Commission for UNESCO, Vicky Soanes. Vicky, hana mai. Kia ora, Vicky.
E nā mana, e nā reo, e rau rangatiri mā. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. It is an absolute honour to deliver opening remarks and represent the New Zealand National Commission for UNESCO today. The National Commission is delighted to support this important event, Navigating a Stormy World, Te Ao Māori Perspectives. The mana of the speakers and the participants in this event is recognition of the importance and relevance of today's discussion. When the National Commission was first approached to support this conference, it was immediately clear that the kaupapa aligned with our mandate. UNESCO, the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organisation, was established after World War II to prevent war through the intellectual and moral solidarity of humanity. It seeks to build peace through international cooperation. New Zealand was the second country to sign the UNESCO Constitution, and our National Commission was established shortly thereafter. Our country, Aotearoa New Zealand, has long been recognised as an active member of UNESCO, promoting a human rights-based perspective as a Pacific country and actively engaging in UNESCO's programmes and activities, all to build peace. Today, the National Commission leads a range of activities, deepening a knowledge exchange between New Zealand, UNESCO and the world. Our current priority areas are oceans for the wellbeing of people and planet, Indigenous knowledge, empowering communities for sustainable futures, and freedom of responsible expression. And it's my view that all of these areas of work connect to the Te Ao Māori perspectives on foreign policy. We are currently supporting New Zealand's engagement with 2 UN decades, the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development and the UN Decade of Indigenous Languages. And our approach to both of those decades take a view embedded in our region, recognising the interconnectedness of language, knowledge, culture and identity. In all areas of our work, our community of youth, UNESCO Aotearoa Youth Leaders, a group led by Ethan Jerome-Leota, who you'll hear from later today. We have a fantastic delegation of youth leaders here today. They guide and support this work. As UNESCO ambassadors and change agents, the youth leaders work to build UNESCO's profile and identify where they can drive, support and collaborate with organisations, networks and initiatives that align with UNESCO's mandate. And I just invite you to approach them at morning tea and lunch and have a chat about our work. We are grateful to them for their commitment to the UNESCO kaupapa of building peace through dialogue. And today's event is an excellent example of how our youth leaders enhance our work, with Ethan providing advice and support to Diplosphere in the development of the program. And I'd like to sincerely and warmly thank Mathew for conceiving and organising this important event with the integrity of the discussions prioritised throughout. So thank you, Mathew. I'd like to finish by recognising the importance of this current moment, and Mathew referenced Matariki. So Aotearoa New Zealand celebrating Matariki as a national holiday under the stars of Aotearoa. As the Prime Minister noted on that day, it demonstrates the generosity of Māori to share knowledge, culture and history, and it holds within it enough space for all of us to build our own meanings and traditions. Recognising our unique place in the world will bring new insights and approaches to our international actions to support peace and well-being for all. I wish you all a wonderful day. Tēnā tātou katoa. Kia ora.
Tēnā koe, Vicky. Thank you very much for those words and for the support of the conference today. Ngā mihi nui kia koe. Ladies and gentlemen, we're now going to introduce the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Honourable Nanaia Mahuta. As Mathew mentioned, she was hoping to be here in person, but unfortunately is unable to do so. But almost Tupac-like, not in a hologram, but via video, by the power of the karakia of Kura Moeahu and the mana of Taranaki Whānui, we have been able to procure her in some way, shape or form, and you will now hear some words from the Honourable Nanaia Mahuta, who is, of course, the Member of Parliament for Hauraki Waikato, is the Minister of Foreign Affairs and also Minister for Local Government, and was the Minister for Māori Development. So, let's hear now from the Minister, the Honourable Nanaia Mahuta.
Kei ngā mana, kei ngā reo, kei ngā karangatanga maha tēnā koutou katoa. Manawa maia te pūtanga o Matariki, manawa maia te āriki o te rangi, manawa maia te mātahi o te tau. Thanks for the invitation to join you today, and unfortunately I can't be there in person, but I'm pleased that this is an opportunity for young Māori and Pacific voices to share how they see the world, how it can shape the way we think about challenges of this time and seek out solutions. We're living through a period with a significant level of disruption and complexities. The international context and our ability to affect foreign policy is at a time when the rules-based norms and international order is being challenged. Foreign policy during a global pandemic when borders are closed, where issues are dynamic and rapidly evolving, and many of the routine tools and fora for diplomacy are not as accessible. We require new skills to navigate our diplomatic relationships that underpin our shared and common objectives. Foreign policy at a time of heightening geostrategic competition and indeed assaults on the most fundamental tenets of international law, state sovereignty, territorial integrity, and human rights, such as we have witnessed in President Putin's actions against Ukraine, is an equally challenging thing. But we are responding with absolute clarity, commitment, speed, and humanity, because our imperative is peace, stability, and greater prosperity. Furthermore, climate change is the existential threat of our generation, which requires an unprecedented level of global agreement and committed leadership. No nation state can sit idle as we strive to keep global warming at 1.5 degrees and move towards a low carbon economy. Here in Aotearoa and in the wider Pacific, we acknowledge that these are difficult times and we should not expect them to grow easier or less complex in the period ahead. The international environment with greater geostrategic competition is likely to test the boundaries of our relationships and our foreign policy settings, and we will need to continue to be agile and adaptable to navigate our way through maintaining our values and interests along the way. Ka mahuta a Matariki i te pai, ka mahuta o tātou tūmanako ki te tau. When Matariki rises above the horizons, our aspirations rise to the year ahead. On Friday, the 24th of June, we celebrated this nation's first ever Māori public holiday, Matariki, recognising the Māori worldview through the lunar calendar and ostensibly our country's growing recognition of mātauranga Māori. I've said that Aotearoa New Zealand's independent foreign policy should be grounded in the principles that we aspire to and apply at home. As a liberal democracy, we privilege fundamental human rights and work actively to sustain, strengthen, and evolve our democratic institutions. Our journey as a nation has not been straightforward as we seek to give life to our founding document, Te Tiriti o Waitangi, and how the principles guide our approach to nation building. We're on a journey, and it's not been without challenge. The nexus of this contested space has shaped the Crown's relationship with Māori, and we are learning and growing from it as a nation. Consequently, our democratic characteristics will continue to evolve as we journey on this path. Several nation states face similar challenges, and we have much to offer from our experience. In our context, inclusion of Indigenous values and interests means recognition of the treaty, all aspects of our society underpinning social cohesion. Like our voyaging ancestors, it's a journey we're destined to make. In navigating it, we're drawing on traditional tools and developing new ones. This toolkit includes values unique to us, reflecting a Tirohanga Māori perspective that is relevant beyond our shores. These values can help shape an independent dimension of our foreign policy that better informs what we stand for and how we would protect or advance those interests. The values I refer to are manaakitanga, kindness, care, the spirit of reciprocity and our common humanity, whanaungatanga, connectedness and relationship to others. Mahi tahi and kotahitanga, working towards a common purpose, shared objectives and solidarity. Kaitiakitanga, stewardship and intergenerational well-being. It's taught us that as a society, we need to work hard to understand the strength of different perspectives with common objectives and the growth that comes from respect. Embracing diversity means that we're prepared to challenge norms that no longer serve a useful purpose. And where there has been conflict or harm, there must be restitution and reconciliation. These values emphasise meaningful, mutual, enduring relationships where mana and sovereignty are respected. They can apply equally to relationships between individuals and peoples as between countries and governments, large and small. The way we protect our interests and values matter in international relations and foreign policy. They help define the world we want to see and are working for. This is more prevalent at a time when the international rules and norms need to reflect the expectations we have of each other and the institutions charged with promoting those expectations. Aotearoa New Zealand is a Pacific country. We share an ocean, a past and a future with our Pacific whanaunga. Our Pacific connections run through language, peoples, history, culture, sport, politics, and many shared interests. We share kaitiaki responsibilities for Te Moana Nui Akiwa, the Blue Ocean continent, and know that what we do sets the course for our tamariki and mokopuna of today and tomorrow. We desire a peaceful, stable, prosperous and resilient Pacific in which New Zealand is a true and trusted partner. We can apply lessons of our domestic context in a way that supports Pacific-led aspirations. Our policy shift in the Pacific has moved towards a greater emphasis on resilience. The strength and success of the region relies on kotahitanga, solidarity and unity of purpose. The next natural step to supporting resilience amongst our partners is listening, enabling partner-led solutions, investing in building long-term capacity, and simply admitting that at times we may not have all the answers to tackle challenges across the Pacific, but the Pacific might. The approach is consistent with our domestic focus on well-being and resilience. It recognises the overlap between domestic and international issues and the need for more integrated policy responses. It means we recognise each has a different starting point and outlook. We aim to build on Pacific people's own capabilities using local and culturally relevant approaches and strengthening the capacity of partner countries to chart their own journey. With the Sustainable Development Goals as a common horizon, we prioritise our cooperation and resources to those that matter most for the region and with Pacific countries' own sustainable development plans. A sign of success will be how we support regional architecture, enable enduring relationships across the region, act with a greater sense of coordination on the challenges that the Pacific have articulated, climate change and economic resilience. This is not just the right and respectful way to engage. It is the only way if we are to give meaning to our whanaungatanga and build the trust that underpins common action and a strong relationship. As a recent example, our COVID-19 response included a Pacific dimension, as we were aware of the high risk posed to small Pacific countries with limited health capacities and economic vulnerability. We worked intensively with Pacific governments to support their efforts to prepare for, respond to, and start to recover from the impacts of the pandemic. Subsequently, this has seen high rates of vaccinations across the Pacific and a strategic focus on regional opportunities for future pandemic preparedness and collaboration. As an island nation, Aotearoa New Zealand is alert to the challenges of our environment and climate change. Surrounded by the ocean and resting on tectonic plates that make us susceptible to sea level rise and significant seismic activity, our people have forged livelihoods fishing and living in coastal communities. We recognise the impact of global warming domestically and the dire situation for our Pacific whanaunga. COP26 in Glasgow last year underscored the need for all nations, including New Zealand, to urgently lift our ambitions and implement the targets set and commitments made in order to make deep emissions cuts by 2030 that are critical to limit the global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees. It is clear that the response to climate change requires a global response where actions follow words. Global effort demands both international cooperation and domestic action. New Zealand continues our strong commitment to global efforts and multilateral solutions. At COP26, we committed to supporting more than 20 new collective initiatives, with many driving innovation and delivery of smart solutions for our shared challenges. We tabled New Zealand's updated NDC, our National Determined Contributions, a commitment to reduce our emissions by 50% from 2005 levels by 2030, in line with the Climate Change Commission's advice on aligning with the 1.5 degree temperature rise limit. Before COP26, New Zealand committed to providing $1.3 billion in climate finance to developing countries over the next 4 years. The new finance pledge is more than 4 times the size of New Zealand's 2018 commitment. This underlines the importance New Zealand attaches to working together with developing country partners to combat climate change. At least 50% of this will go to supporting our Pacific neighbours, meeting their urgent climate change challenges, and at least 50% of the total climate finance allocation will be geared towards adaptation. The way in which we support a Pacific-led response to climate change and strategically coordinate with other development partners on these issues will ensure greater impact across the region. That engagement is based on 5 features of our resilience approach. Tātai hono, a recognition of enduring whakapapa connections. Tātou tātou, all working collectively together. Whaia te taumata ohanga, advancing a circular economy. Tūrau Hawaii, navigating our aspiration together. Arongia ki rangiatia, pursuing excellence across the Pacific. This approach will change up the way the Ministry of Foreign Affairs works within and alongside the Pacific. There are several examples that indicate New Zealand's relationships across the Pacific are growing stronger. In March, I signed the Duavata partnership with Prime Minister Hosea Bainimarama to formalise progress made in New Zealand and the Republic of Fiji. This partnership sets out priorities and principles under which our respective governments cooperate, coordinate and partner in identified areas. More recently, New Zealand was quick to stand with the Pacific Island Forum partners, Australia, Fiji, Papua New Guinea, to support Solomon Islands in addressing the unrest which arose late last year. New Zealand Police and Defence Force personnel worked alongside our regional partners to support the Royal Solomon Islands Police Force in the spirit of tātou tātou. Calm was restored quickly in Hauora, a testament to the effectiveness of the Pacific regional approach. Alongside the ongoing security deployment in Hauora, we're working hard to help Solomon Islands address its current COVID outbreak, as we are with many other Pacific Island nations. The resilience of the Pacific is an important priority at this time. The eruption of Hunga Tonga, Hunga Hāpai, earlier this year reminds us of the geographic vulnerability of the Pacific, which resides in the Ring of Fire and on a vast blue ocean continent. It was also an opportunity to extend our hand of friendship to support a partner in a moment of need. We continue to assist in the recovery effort and seek out new opportunities to work together. The global pandemic, natural disasters caused by cyclical weather patterns, high labour mobility to sustain local economies, a reliance on single industries like tourism or mining, are risks for many Pacific nations. This extends to recasting the way development assistance is invested into the Pacific. By focusing on strategic investment as well as partnering for development, we can help to build long-term resilience in Pacific countries. For example, along with the World Bank, the Asian Development Bank and Australia, we have financed budget support to Pacific Island countries to build resilience in response to the economic impacts of COVID-19. However, We need new committed conversations that are prepared to look at the level of economic indebtedness and to find solutions to a burden that hampers economic growth for small island developing nations. 2022 has seen growing international geostrategic tensions become overt. Russia's invasion and ongoing war against Ukraine has taken a deep toll on the people. It has also been an assault on the rules-based international order. New Zealand was quick to defend the sovereignty of Ukraine and their territorial integrity. It is all the more shocking because the unprovoked invasion was initiated by a permanent member of the UN Security Council. The invasion has shifted the balance of security in Europe and cast a long economic shadow globally. Shaping, agreeing and strengthening the rules and norms that allow states to resolve issues peacefully and fairly, that moderate the power of the large and protect the interests of the small, that allow us to tackle international and global challenges. This is the bread and butter of New Zealand's foreign policy across our security, trade, environment and development interests. It's not possible to overstate how important a rules-based order is for a country like ours. It is an order that was hard-won, accreted slowly and incrementally as norms were framed, rules agreed, institutions developed, however imperfect. By contrast, actions which undermine the foundations of the order can be unilateral, a comparatively easy and damaging lever to pull. New Zealand has cut new ground in response to President Putin's invasion. We've condemned the invasion unequivocally. We've instituted a sanctions regime at speed, as well as travel bans and export controls. We've committed humanitarian aid to support the Ukrainian people. We're supporting the International Criminal Court and the investigations of the International Court of Justice to hold perpetrators to account. We've provided military aid alongside others and in line with international law to assist Ukraine to defend itself. This is not a war between authoritarians and democracies. It is not a war between the West and Russia. It's a struggle between internationally agreed rules and a might means right attitude. This is a moment when New Zealand has chosen to stand firm with those who share our commitment to the international rule of law, state sovereignty and human rights. Being clear on what we stand for matters. It's a position based on our values and interests and can be relied on were we to face similar challenges closer to home here in the Pacific. We see ourselves as a trusted and reliable friend who can be counted on in times of great need, especially when the rules and norms of international law are breached and the threat of instability, insecurity, and dare I say, war may emerge. I hope to have outlined that our values-based approach with an Indigenous lens continues to shape our independent foreign policy. I've had the honour and privilege of being Foreign Minister at this time and the opportunity to bring to the portfolio my experience as a Māori woman and ensuring a Te Ao Māori lens is applied to our foreign policy. This has manifested and supported the way MFAT organises itself, who it employs, and our representatives abroad. It's still too early to say how the bicultural values of Aotearoa has impacted our foreign policy outlook. What I can say is that when we engage with other economies and states, there is growing recognition that our unique perspective born out of lived experience founded in the Treaty of Waitangi does have some transferable merit. We've sought to maintain respectful, consistent and a predictable approach, which underscores the value of manaaki and in particular the recognition of mana while ensuring our perspective is known. We will continue to promote our values in a world of differing views and find opportunities to showcase the bicultural nature of our nation. Our new normal does not need to rest on post-COVID health and economic recovery. A new normal is a commitment towards empathy, sustainability, intergenerational solutions for well-being, a bringing together of manaaki, whanaunga, mahitahi and kotahitanga, and kaitiakitanga. Each of these values, when expressed in a relationship, gives a sense that everything is connected and purposeful. Nō reira, mana watia matariki, mana watia Aotearoa. Kei ngā mana, kei ngā reo, kei
Ka pai, that was so good, we were almost going to play it twice. Nā rere ngā mihi nui ki te minita, ko te tumanoko kapiki te ora ki aia. Words from the Minister there. I'm now going to invite the Secretary of Foreign Affairs and Trade, Craig Seed, to come up and say a few words and then take some questions, if that's all right, to take some questions from the floor. We do have roving mics available, so if there are questions that you want to raise, and there are some very good remarks out of the Minister there that I think all of us should be thinking about, and I know, no doubt those will percolate over the few hours and throughout the conference. One thing in particular, a real focus on values and the importance of the Indigenous relationship in maintaining, retaining, and potentially strengthening relationships internationally. And I note Minister Penny Wong's comments as well with the Labour government when they announced their commitment to the Uluru Statement from the Heart and the need also for Australia to look to Indigenous values in the way in which they operate and interrelate with other countries and nations as well. So without anything further, I'll hand over to our learned guest to be able to say a few words and then take any questions from the floor. Now, if you have any questions, please raise your hand. We have volunteers with microphones who will bring those to you. So can I hand over now to Chris Seed to say a few words here with us. And it's great to have you here, Chris. Thank you so much for making yourself available. Nā reira tēnā koutou. Tēnā koutou kia ora tātou katoa. You want to say a few words and then we can ask questions, or should I ask, or how should we...
Why don't you ask? The Minister's spoken very powerfully and very well, so I think that...
Okay. Do you mind, can I get a mic up? Ashley, have we got a roving, can we get a roving mic up here? And then Craig can have a mic, and then we'll get questions from the floor from anyone if they've got questions as well. The first one I wanted to ask, Chris, is... I know the Minister mentioned that it's too early to assess bicultural values, but can you talk to, in your time, from 2019, I believe, what you have seen in the way in which there has been value from the approach from New Zealand with our Indigenous history, knowledge, and the way in which we relate, the benefits that you have already seen out of that, potentially from a certain trade deal that was announced last week, Chris, or even in the way in which we engage with Australia over the next couple of days. Are you able to talk to us a bit about that and what you have seen from your own experience thus far?
Kia ora, Julian. Thank you. Yes, everyone can hear me. Thanks very much. That's on. Well, tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you very much for the invitation. And just before I start, could I just say on behalf of the Minister, I was in touch with her yesterday. As you can see, she made a Herculean effort to be able to sort of speak, although, as she said, she's sort of feeling okay-ish, I think with the emphasis probably on the ish. But we wish her all the best for a speedy recovery. To your question, perhaps the way I would answer it is that if you look across the lines of effort that any government is required to contemplate in advancing its national interests, and its delivering to the sort of prosperity and the security and the sustainability through its international connections, I think you can, it's easily able to see the different ways in which New Zealand continues to adapt to secure benefit from for Maori and to bring an Indigenous perspective. So if you think about it in the practicalities, Julian, you very helpfully gave a shout out for the EU FTA announced or signed last week by the Prime Minister in Brussels. If you look to the UK FTA signed earlier in the year, if you look to some of the work that we've been doing, as the Minister sort of outlined through the Pacific, in the last couple of years in the term of this government, in all of it you can, I think, see the strong effort to use the principles that the Minister spoke to both drive our effort to prioritise where we're leaning in, where we're ensuring that the New Zealand perspective and the New Zealand way of doing things is reflected in those relationships. And I think that it's about ensuring that that New Zealand speaks with legitimacy and with authenticity, and we can only do that if our method of operation, if our practice is reflected in a sense in our national experience. And again, I thought the Minister spoke, quite powerfully to the point about a collaboration, about recognition, and about restitution. These are sort of elements which are all part of the New Zealand journey. We're still we're still on that journey, but nevertheless bringing, as we've become more adept domestically in dealing with some of those issues, bringing that same perspective and that same approach to the way we deal with our international partners.
The Minister also made mention of Matariki. Matariki is a shared knowledge system from the Pacific. That's where we get our origins of Matariki from. And the Minister also mentioned about the Sustainable Development Goals for the region, potentially led in conjunction with Aotearoa, New Zealand and Australia. But as we look to the new year, as we are in this new year now, we think of Matariki. I wondered if you could talk a little bit, Chris, about those sustainable development goals. What do they look like going forward? What's in the back of the mind when we think about the sustainable development goals for the region across the Pacific?
So the Pacific, is pretty frank in its own conversations. Pacific nations are very frank about where they sit. Or how far back they sit in terms of progress against the UN Sustainable Development Goals, the 10 of them. So practical way, if you look at women's representation in the political systems in the Pacific, or if you think about education and literacy, the Pacific doesn't score well relative to many other regions. And New Zealand has a strong set of investments in looking to help address, in a multifaceted set of investments, and looking to help, in conjunction with Pacific partners, address some of those areas. On the other hand, I'd also say that the Pacific nations, the small island states, have really got their mind around this issue. They are very well organised, arguably better organised than New Zealand in thinking about how they want to tackle those challenges, how they want to organise and prioritise the sustainable development goals they want to focus on. And so, with some of our capabilities and their ambition and their prioritisation of effort, all of that sort of feeds into, for example, where we invest our development spend in the region. It's also one of the reasons that sits behind the appointment of Louisa Wall as our ambassador for gender equity, for sport, with special permissions for advancing some of those sort of democratic ideals in the region. That's a sort of another mechanism, another line of effort where New Zealand can bring a particular sort of expertise to the Pacific in ways which we think will be useful to our Pacific neighbours.
But a region even more potentially strategically important given the influence and impact of the increasing approach of China within the region, right?
Yeah, China's just one of several, countries which are, leaning into the region, and it, in a sense that's it's not surprising. The Pacific, the blue continent, at a time when the health of the oceans, where climate change, where the sustainability of fisheries, where fish stocks in many places are under great stress. The Pacific has a whole range of reasons that it's increasingly attracting outside interest. And again, our part of our role as a country of the Pacific is to work with our partners to create the frameworks to engage with those partners in ways which actually serve the interests of the Pacific.
We've got questions now. I think we just have one at the back and then I'll come over here. Is that okay? One at the back. Is that your hand, Mohi? It is. Ka pai. Mohi's got a question at the back and then we'll come to you, sir, up the front here. Tēnā koe, Mohi.
Whakamatautau, ka reo rua. Taku pātai, kai te matua. Ki te atu nā rā tātou i te wā i a Matariki. Kawa matua tērā ka noho tērā nā Aotearoa anō tōna kaupapa i tū ka noho ko ia te mea matua hei whai mā tātou. Ka uru mai te wairua Aotearoa i runga i tēnā whakaro, māramatanga ki tērā o ngā whetū. Ka huki mai ki te mahi e kōrero nei tō tātou waia, tō tātou minita. E ārā tā te kawa o Aotearoa ina ko koutou tērā ka airi ki tā wā i ka noho. Ko te kawa o Aotearoa hei whai mā koutou e ki te aowa. Just to say, I just wanted to reflect back to the day of Matariki. And it was given, I think, one of our people asked the question, made a statement, said, it was the day that Aotearoa came into being, became mature, and the fact that Matariki was observed and understood and acknowledged as being something unique to Aotearoa, because it was Aotearoa who created it. The question then I'm asking is, how is that understanding? Can we provide that type of understanding with MFAT, with our minister, with yourself? How do you give that intelligence, that understanding, that acknowledgement to the people of describing what is Aotearoa's kawa as far as our values that we've heard being explained here? How do we give that assurance to the people, this is Aotearoa, for the fact of this is our kawa, this is our identity? Koera ke taku pāta.
Ka pai, Mohi. Chris?
That's a very thoughtful question. Let me answer it in this way. To progress New Zealand's, to Aotearoa New Zealand's interests in the world, we need to operate, as a small state, which faces a lot of headwinds. We need to operate in the world, the stormy waters, which are the part of the title of today's hui. We need to work in the world in ways which look authentic and legit to the countries that we're dealing with. Some of that comes from the way our parliament looks and our cabinet looks and our senior ministers look. So it's a very powerful symbol when several of our international-facing ministers bring their identity to the table. The minister speaks clearly to that point. Minister Henare speaks clearly to that point. Minister Whāwhoi, before he left office, the representation of our cabinet reflects that in our parliament and is a very powerful symbol of the way in which New Zealand has continued to adapt and change over time. And there is no question that it looks authentic and legit to the people that we deal with. At a departmental level, the Foreign Ministry is having to really step up and invest more in building its capability, ensuring that our heads of mission offshore, our staff offshore, also are capable in Mataranga Māori and Tikanga, that they too are familiar with these concepts, that they can connect people we deal with offshore with New Zealand and New Zealand as it currently is. another way to describe how we can move that forward is for example, as I mentioned, in the trade negotiations, finding vehicles through, and sounds very banal, but chapters in FTAs which give voice to the particular responsibilities, obligations, and interests of Māori. To provide vehicles to build more connection, invest more in capability, to create more opportunity. If you look at, and that's in our traditional FTAs, if you look at some of the new agreements we're pursuing, Indigenous cooperation agreements with Australia, we've got one in negotiation with Canada, we had one initiative in the APEC context. It's part of our agreement on climate change as well that we're looking to looking to develop with a range of close partners. All of these things we can only advance them if, from the New Zealand end, we look like we're delivering for our communities. That is, we have the support of the New Zealand community, the business community, the Maori community, the trading community. And we can only advance them if the way in which we prosecute the diplomacy actually speaks to New Zealand values and also that willingness to establish rules, to have disciplines, and to be willing to negotiate in good faith with partners.
We'll take another question here, just up here. Thank you very much.
Chris, tēnā koe, e kui mai koromā, he mātauranga mā tēnā koutou, ko Jay, tōku ingoa, ko te whariwānanga o te pāpaka nui a Māui a hau. Kia ora everybody, my name's Jay, I'm from the Department of Pacific Affairs at the Australian National University. So I've met Chris a few times when he was High Commissioner. I'm going to apologise first, Chris, because my question's quite blunt. Minister... I know Minister Mahuta is a new face to something that's been going on in MFAT for quite some time, since the 70s, really. And I'm drawn to Atareta Pōnanga, her statement claiming that the ministry was very good at putting brown icing on a white cake. So I'm asking here, and this is because there's been a lot of stuff up here, there's a lot of stuff, I'm talking to my colleague here from ANU as well, about values, which are wonderful, values, pleasantries, etc. But can you point to one thing the ministry has actually done materially to demonstrate your commitment to these values beyond just saying this is, these are our values of doing this, that, and the other? Can you point to an example of that?
I can point to an example about the way the department has looked to change and has changed the way it recruits its diplomatic officers. If you look at our numbers, in terms of not everyone's prepared to identify, self-identify, but our representation of Māori Pacifica in the ministry's intakes over the last 5 years is pretty much in line with population. If you look at our heads of mission, the number who identify as Māori is essentially almost representative of the broader New Zealand population. If you look in the sort of external-facing world, I think the minister sort of spoke quite powerfully to the practicalities of the speed with which we responded in the Solomon Islands. Or the way in which we've negotiated chapters in FTAs, or the way we've created new vehicles to engage Māoridom through, for example, the taumata. A key outcome from the Trade for All strategy provides a mechanism for the ministry and ministers to understand from Māori about the international world in which they're trading, and to discuss and figure out how we can use those diplomatic vehicles like trade negotiations to provide more opportunity. So I mean that's just a sort of a small selection where I would say that we are demonstrably better than we were, while also absolutely acknowledging that we need to be better than where we are.
And I don't know if anyone else has got a question, but the last one from me, sorry Chris, is that can we expect to see, therefore, say in the next trade delegation, and I know there's one going on Wednesday, a greater representation, a greater cognizance, recognition of that in that trade delegation, and the way in which that trade delegation will work with their representatives from Australia in the next couple of days?
Thanks, Julian. Absolutely. So to use the Australian New Zealand Leadership Forum is the it's a mechanism by which business, influencers, and the political system get together once a year to think about the Australian-New Zealand relationship. It has a line of effort in it around building emerging talent, youth, getting them interested, getting you interested. Everyone here is younger than me, so that'll count. Getting them interested in the significance of of our most fundamental relationship. But it also has in it a forum around Indigenous cooperation. That grouping, co-chaired on the New Zealand side by Tracy Haupapa, is currently in Australia. They are meeting with their Australian sort of counterparts and colleagues on Wednesday morning before they step into the broader Australian-New Zealand Leadership Forum. They are currently, I think today, in Brisbane doing trade-related activity. That is the New Zealand delegation. And then they'll be continuing on to Sydney. So again, these are practical examples where people who are at the coalface are able to have their voice heard and to help the government identify and prioritise the things that it needs to be doing.
Ka pai. One final question just here. Thank you very much.
Kia ora, Chris. We've travelled all the way from Te Whānau Opanui for this day conference. If you're not aware where that is, it's the porthole where the canoes landed from Hawaii. And we have a member in Parliament called Rawiri Waititi. But anyway, the question is, the Minister raised that we need to develop the Indigenous lens on foreign policy. Our question added, as Julian would know, with an invite. Will you engage the Whānau Opanui Youth Forum to further explore and design the Indigenous lens in which the Minister has invited us to? And we do recognise a matter of urgency to do that. We will have crayfish on the table. But we have a delegation here of youth. It's interesting, your responses may be above their headline, but it's about bringing them to these conferences to engage with us and listening to the Minister. So the question is, sorry Julian, for time, we invite you to Te Whānau Opanui to further develop the Indigenous lens and focus on foreign policy, and are you willing to come, Chris, knowing that our Minister is ill at this time? Kia ora.
Yes, that's an easy answer. Thanks for the question. Thanks for the invitation. I think you know the broader point that you properly make is that we have to, as a foreign ministry, we've got to continue to find new ways, different ways to engage with youth generally, with iwi more broadly. There's a sort of a range of things that are happening and that are available where this can and will be done. So thanks for the invitation. I'm very happy to take it up.
Thank you, Chris. One, there we go. Thank you, Chris. Thank you to Whānau Opanui. I was going to say I'd take the invitation if you don't want to, Chris. Unfortunately, they know that, which is why they didn't ask. Thank you, Chris. Ladies and gentlemen, please a huge round of applause. Chris C. Thank you. Thanks, Chris. Before we introduce our next panel, by the end of the day, we're going to teach you a new waiata aringa, a new Māori action song. It's simply counting to 10 in Māori, but it requires some coordination. And upon reviewing the crowd, I'm a little bit concerned. So what we're going to do is try it. Tutu mai, etu. You just have to follow me. Pretty simple. Tahi. Okay, that wasn't great. Let's try it again. Okay, so tahi is a step on the hands on legs. Toru wha. Tahi. Next one is tahi rua. So we just go tahi rua tahi. Go. Tahi rua tahi. Got it? Okay, so we'll start again. We go toru wha, we go tahi, tahi, rua, tahi. Ka pai, toru wha. Tahi, tahi, rua, tahi. Got it, cool. Toru, follow me, just you go that way. So you're right, my left. Ka pai? So we go tahi, rua, toru, rua, tahi. Got it? Easy. It's easy. Here we go. We'll go again. So we go. Toru wha, just go tahi, rua, toru, rua, tahi. Toru wha. Tahi, rua, toru, rua, tahi. So you follow me. You go right, I'll go left, okay? You don't know where your right or your left is. I'm worried about the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Okay, here we go. Toru wha. Tahi, rua, toru, rua, tahi. Back to the beginning. Toru wha. Tahi. Tahi, rua, tahi. Tahi, rua, toru, rua, tahi. One more time. Tahi. Tahi, rua, tahi. Tahi, rua, toru, rua. And then we'll finish on fa. Fa goes to the right. Or your left. Ka right? So it goes tahi, rua, toru, fa, toru, rua, tahi. Easy, eh? One more time. Tahi, rua, toru, fa, toru, rua. The ones at the whānau Apanui are going, this is easy. Okay, so we'll go tahi, tahi, rua, tahi. Tahi, rua, toru, rua, tahi. Tahi, rua, toru, fa, toru, rua, tahi. Not that quick. Here we go. Ready? And tahi. Tahi, rua, tahi. Toru. Tahi, rua, toru, rua, fa. Tahi, rua, toru, fa, toru. We'll pick it up a bit. Here we go. Toru, fa, tahi. Tahi, rua, tahi. Tahi, rua, toru, rua, tahi. Tahi, rua, toru, fa, toru. Big wigga. Toru, fa, e, tahi. Tahi, rua, tahi. Tahi, rua, toru, rua, tahi. Okay, and noho. By the end of the day, we're going to count to 10. And trust me, the hands go all over the place, man. Vogue! Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, now it's time now for our first panel session. Te pū whenua-tanga o tō tātou nei nohoanga I roto I te ao whānui. Hahia nei ngā mātāpono, hei arahi a tātou me nā rānei he mātāpono. Session 1, Destination, our place in the world. What are our values anyway? I'm going to introduce the chair, and then hopefully the chair will introduce the panel members, Martin, Ethan, Awakina, and Liz. Our panel chair is of Ngāti Kahungunu ki te Wairoa. Is it close to the whānau Apanui? Ngāti Kahungunu ki te not really that close, actually. Ngāti Kahungunu, now that I think about it. Ngāti Kahungunu ki te Wairoa, Ngai Tūhoe, and Tongarewa. He is currently working on the health system reform at the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet, and also provides Te Ao Māori leadership at the Earthquake Commission, a former Māori advisor to the British High Commission, and worked alongside the UK government in strengthening the UK Māori cooperation in the areas of trade, education, climate change, arts, and people-to-people relations, and included the inclusion of an Indigenous trade chapter in the recently agreed free trade agreement between the two nations, which in June 2022 saw him awarded the Queen's British Empire Medal for services to UK-New Zealand relations. Please may welcome the chair of our first panel, the uber-talented Mathew Gifford. Mathew, haramaya.
Kia ora tātou e noho nei ki raro e te tuanui o tō tātou whare. Kua mihi ngā mihia, kua tuku nā tūrā, ngā karakia e ngā ruānuku, e ngā mātanga kōrero, e ngā taumata, kua iria tō tātou kaupapa ki te tāhuhu o tō tātou whare I tēnei rā. Hoi anō kua hau tēnei whai nei te o te kōrero I te tai omihi e rere nei ki runga ki te kopeti o te whare. Kia ora tātou katoa, and really good to be here this morning. Tēnā koutou. I also want to acknowledge the panellists who are going to join me up here shortly, and I will introduce the panel, but an acknowledgement to the Minister, and ka tika kia mihi ake rā kia ia, a kia piki te ora kia ia I e nei rā. I want to pay special homage. I know it's not kosher to do this for when there's lots of dignified and distinguished people in the room, but I am also a Cook Islander. My father's a Cook Islander, range from the very far north of the Cooks, from a motu called Tongareva, and I know the Cook Islands High Com's in the room too, so I should say a big kia ora ana koutou katoa toi te aloha polia tō tātou atua. Really good to be here today. And to start the first discussion panel of the day, which talks about values. But there are a few points I wanted to raise before I introduce the panel today, who will share kōrero, and then we will open up the floor for questions to the panel as well. And the first thing I wanted to share about, and kind of a bit of a prelude, if you will, to this panel discussion, is that I always enjoyed watching a TV show called The Big Bang Theory, if those of you who are familiar with it. In fact, I heard Tainui Stevens last week at a TEDx conference in Kapiti Coast say that everything has a hum to it, and he said before there was a bang, there was a hum. But there's a Big Bang Theory, and there's a TV show, there's a show within a show, kind of in Matrix-like, and the show is Fun with Flags, if anyone's ever watched the TV show The Big Bang Theory. And Sheldon Cooper hosts this show called The Fun with Flags. And one episode he comes out and he's got these flags and he goes through different flags, not just countries, but all sorts of flags. And he said, if flags have taught me anything in life, it's to be firmly, it's to go wherever the wind may take you, as long as you are firmly attached to a rigid pole. Now, that's quite funny, but if you think about it, there's actually quite a profound lesson, I think, in there, which is that our mātāpono, our value system, our uaratanga, however you want to describe it, is that which grounds us in what we do and how we do it and who we do it with. And that wind that takes the flag all over the place, those are the stormy seas that this conference talks about, or those challenges, the things of everyday life that we have no control over. But the thing that grounds us into the way we face that are those values and those mātāpono, and that's what we're going to talk about today. I want to say a couple of things too further from the conversations that have happened this morning. And the first is that I don't think we should be confusing our national identity with our identity and with that of what the Māori identity is, and certainly the Māori value system is. We can certainly create a collective identity for nationhood, and I think we've started to hear some of that conversation talk about today. What does that collective handshake look like in the world? But I do not think we should diminish the value of the Indigenous relationship, which is Māori to the world, however Māori want to see that shaped. Our iwi, our hapu, have full determination over that. And then the third thing I want to say is, I know there's lots of government agencies represented here today, ngā wāhanga o te kāwanatanga nei, me ngā Māori e whakakanuhi nei tō ake tari. And I know what that's like, and I know that there's a big responsibility on Māori in these government departments, because when you go home from this conference, everyone's going to race to your desk. And they're going to ask you how to do it. And they're going to ask you, can you do it? Can you help us do it? Can you start the karakia? And I do think, and I implore our colleagues, I say it tongue-in-cheek, but it's actually quite true, right? And everyone who's been in this position knows, and you'll be nodding your head now, and you'll be somewhat dreading going back to your desk. But I do want to implore colleagues here today who are not Māori, who will go back to those departments, before you think about doing that, think about who the kaitiaki are of our kaitiaki inside those wāhanga as well. Because I have a big heart for those people, because if you've been there fighting the fight from inside the system, it can be pretty tough. Not to start on a somber note, but there were 3 points I wanted to make, and let us introduce the panel now who are going to follow up and talk to us today. So our session is on manaaki, on what does the term Western values mean in Aotearoa, New Zealand today. And I will introduce briefly the panellists, and then the panellists will come up and share some thoughts with us. Ko tō tātou kai kōrero tuatahi nei o te rā, ko te mea, ko ai te kai whakahaere o te wāhanga Māori no roto mai te Manatu Aorere, the Director of Māori Policy Unit at the Ministry for Foreign Affairs, Matua Martin Wikaira, see down here. Secondly, following up from Matua Martin will be Ethan Jerome-Leota. You heard him spoken about at the beginning of the conference, from Waikato Tainui, and was born and bred in the Waikato and now is a UNESCO Aotearoa Youth Leader Chair. Our third speaker up is Wakina Tujuba from the African Community Council of Wellington, a 20-year New Zealander, but home is Ethiopia, where he was born and raised. And then finally, but certainly not least, the young charming lady up the front row, Liz Mellish, will be our final speaker today. And Liz, Chairman at Te Raukura, the Whare Waka o Pōneke, and lots of other special roles, which we'll get to, and a dear friend as well. So with that, I'll ask the panellists to come up and introduce themselves and share ō rātou whakaaro. So first up, can you please join me in welcoming to the stage Martin Wikaira, Director Māori Policy Unit at the Foreign Affairs.
Kia ora tātou. Mana whenua kura ko koutou nā. Pēnei te mihi nui rawa tēnā ko koutou nei. Ai whakatauhia mai mātou I tēnei wā. Mana waka. And in that regard, I look down at my very good friends from the diplomatic corps here, because they have rowed their waka to our shores o tēnā koutou. Then I say mana taiohi. Te whānau apanui ka koutou rā. Tēnā ka mihi nui rawa atu ia no tēnā. Nā te mea, I roto I te rūma, I roto I tēnei whare, te tini o nā taiohi taia tina nā mai I te whakarongoa ki wene o tātou kōrero. Pēnei kia koutou, nā reira e koutou mā, tēnā tātou. Mana pake kia ko koutou, tēnei te mihi nui rawa atu kia koutou I taia tina nā mai o a koutou nei mātauranga mōhiotanga. Mana moka puna tēnei te mihi. People, you've heard all the interesting bits, but mine is more or less a wero. And it is a wero to each and every one of you in this room, because values are only as good as our ability to display, to utilize, to share those values. And you've heard all the values. Manaakitanga, rangatirotanga, you've heard them. Whanaungatanga. And we know those. But if we are going to express those on a world stage, and I'm speaking to my own ministry, I'm speaking to UNESCO, I'm speaking to MPI, I'm speaking to MB, and anyone else who walks their talk out there in the world for all of us. I'm going to put out a simple wero, and this wero is this. If you are going to be the kind of representative that we need out there, then you really need to understand the wero that is back here. We need you to be the mātauranga representative for us out there. And to do that, we need to make sure that you understand mātauranga I konei, I Aotearoa. Now, there are a number of you in here, of course, who have done this for a number of years, and I mihi to you. But there are many in here, I know, have some of that. But if you're going to be a representative out there for us, can I encourage you to add to that? Can I encourage you to go out there with the wisdom of your tupuna? Can I encourage you to go out there with the things that are going to help us as Māori to take our voice to the world? And I encourage you all to do that, please. Because what is out there is actually about respect.
Carry what you have here, there, with respect. And you will bring together that mātauranga that will help us all to make our way in the world. I've had some rather interesting questions today. I've heard mention of a very good friend, Atereta. Be there 50 years ago, but we heard it. I want to say to that person, we've come a hell of a long way since there. And we've done it by recognising that we have to do it. We've done it by recognising that in this room there are people who I know will go home from this very good hui, Meri ngā mihi, from this very good hui, and encourage others to do the same. Chris is absolutely right, because Chris and I both know we still have a long way to go. But ko kaheke mātau ki te whai te āhuatango tēnei o tātou tuahua. We will do that, and we will do it well. And with your help, we will do it better. Tēnā tātou.
Sorry. I've got a presentation, so please bear with me. Ka pai. O morena koutou, he te tuatahi, he mihi ana pāpakura mō tō whakatau I te ata nei, tēnei te mihi atu, mō ngā mana whenua, a te ati awa, taranaki whānui, Ngāti Toa. Me whakahonere I tō tātou kēngi, a tuheitia pōtatau te whirowhiro te tuawhetu, kei tōnā hurewa tapu. Dīre hau, pai mārire. Morena koutou, as a young Māori rangatahi, born, bred and nourished by the awa of Waikato and guided by the principles of the kingitanga, the meaning of manaki te tangata has been engraved in my whakapapa and everything I do in my life. Sorry, next slide please. In Aotearoa, it's natural for us to interweave tikanga Māori values, or sometimes referred to as the tangas, in our daily lives. And applying these values in the way we interact with others and foster lifelong relationships, both domestically and internationally, as we've heard this morning already. Our tikanga Māori values are purposely designed to work in unison with one another, to ensure that we can achieve that goal or objective, but most importantly, safeguarding and protecting our special taonga for future generations. Next slide, please. So when I was looking for inspiration, as you do, for my kōrero this morning, I came across this quote, which I believe sums up my key messages quite nicely. Don't look to take the tangas, take the tangata. Excuse me. Take the people with you. If you let Māori lead and they gain your trust, they will give you everything that you need. But it has to be partnership, it has to be meaningful, and it has to be genuine. Anything else could be a rocky road. Our tikanga Māori values are verbs, not nouns, and are only truly activated when the betterment of the people is essential to achieving any goal or objective. Next slide, please. I believe what makes us unique as Aotearoa New Zealand is how we naturally interweave tikanga Māori values into everything we do, but most importantly, ensuring that whatever decisions we make are for the betterment of the people. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, pai marire kia tātou katoa.
Good morning. Thank you, Ethan. A little warm-up, a bit different to what we did before, but if you remember this, follow me with it. Do you remember the meri, meri, meri? Yeah, let's go. Meri, meri, meri. Patia, ruopati. Nice. Kia ora everyone, my name is Wikaira Tujuba. I am an executive member of the African Community Council. You probably don't know what that is, and that's fine, I'll touch on that. When I got asked to speak, I thought about what lens I could bring, what value I could provide you guys as you look to navigate this massive, massive kaupapa. And I wrestled back and forth. I could talk about my 20 years from arriving in New Zealand at the age of 5 and navigating New Zealand with neither a Te Ao Māori worldview or a Western worldview, but rather an Ethiopian one, and what that's been like to bring me to this stage. I thought about writing the youth strategy and how I could occupy that and show you the difficulty in writing a strategy that has to embody 54 different countries, where to a lot it might be Africa, which is a continent, which is a lot with African Community Council we deal with ministries, with African views or African values. That's a very, very naive question because it's embedded with so much. But that's exactly what I'm going to talk to you about. And the pillars that my dad instilled in me and to journey this world and how I use that to do my work in my mahi. So I'll go across. Next slide, please. Easy one. Can I push it from this end? Okay, all right. Yeah, I'll give you an excuse to be rude today. If you have a piece of paper, please grab it out. If you can use your phone otherwise. I can see you all, so please do it. Nice. I want you to write a list going down of 5 of the closest people to you, their initials, in a list format, and give space on the right, because we'll come back to this. So the closest people, excluding family members, and ignore some spelling mistakes. Yeah, excluding. Yeah. Yeah, this is going to sound like... This will be yours, so no one will know. Don't worry. 5 going down. 5 of the closest people to you. Nice. Next slide, please. You can continue to do this. You have permission to be rude. I'll breeze through this. We're not going to talk about the last 20 years, but I arrived in New Zealand at the age of 5 with my mum and my siblings. My mum is the most powerful woman I've ever come across. It is one thing to start a business, do what it is. It's another to raise 5 kids not knowing a word of English and arriving, and I could talk about that forever. I come from a neuroscience background. I spent the last 3 years at Creative HQ where I looked to understand the building blocks of an entrepreneurship and what is the key thing that makes them wild enough and crazy enough to go in the straight to start their business. And I believe there's huge value in that. I got elected into the African Community Council last year, and this was kissing babies, election, everything in between. And it was fun. I really enjoyed it. And these are the pillars that I talked about there. My true north is raise the living standards of Africans. Seems mammoth, seems big. I'll touch on that through the speech as well. AEE, Africa, entrepreneurship, environment. Anything I do has to fit within one of these 3 pillars. Next slide, please. African nations and friends who have come together to be a united voice of Wellington African community. That's who we are. So what does it mean to be an African, and how can we be an intermediary while you interact with the rest of the world? We speak your language, we understand what your values and where you come from, again, to an extent, right? You might come from North Africa, which is very different to South Africa, and your values, but we're a bit closer than you guys. And that's what we're there for. And our goal is to promote African culture and heritage to our fellow New Zealanders. Next slide, please. Pillar number 1, the tree will grow regardless if you or I plant the seed. In Ethiopian, as my dad says, it goes, Kara whago de muvi kofadent. So what it says in this is, what is your goal? What is your purpose? Is it to say, I planted the seed? Is it for the tree and the shade and the fruit that will bear in generations to come? Do you want to say, I did this, or is it done? And we'll tap into this as it goes through and the difficulties of it. But what it is collaboration. If you plant the seed, I'll water it. If you water it, my kids will build a fence around, understanding they will never taste the fruit from this tree or be shaded from the harsh sun from this tree. But it's exactly why we're doing it now. Next slide, please. Pillar number 2, you learn to write the way your teacher teaches you how to write. If they link, you link. If they slant, you slant. I'll let that one sink in a bit. Let's talk to you about inheriting or becoming the very problem, because the problem-solving capabilities are inherited. So it's innovation. How do you look at it from a different angle, a different sphere? Look around it from a different way. Next slide, please. Before you change the world, which you will, please clean your room. And that's a favorite of my dad's. He's incredible as well. And this is the ugly mahi, the one that's not seen, behind the scenes. It's so attractive. Again, it ties into the first goal of, do you want to say you planted the seed? But when you do the mahi behind the scenes, that allows for this to be, this bigger task to be done, that's true. That's purpose embedded. That's ego removed from the conversation. The low-hanging fruit, the things that's not seen, the things that need to be done. So using these pillars, I'll talk about the African Youth Strategy. I'll go next. Sorry, really quickly right out. I'll just go next one as well. So for the youth strategy, we broke them down into their 4 subcategories, understanding they are incredibly different. They are all exposed to different worlds, and the help they require is very different. I'll go next slide as well, please. And the 3 core views we use, and these again are very broad to connect Africans. So how can we connect them one another that they actually form bonds and relationships with other people that are going through the same thing they are? Support. What does guidance support of Africans look like? And can we let them dictate this guidance that they require? But initially starting somewhere. Empower. How do we get them to be so proud of who they are and their kōpapa and where they've been raised, to understand bilingualism as a superpower and to communicate with one another, understanding it isn't there? I go next slide. And within that, created a framework that we could work. I'm not going to go into the intricacies of what's done, and there's hat in there. But that's the epitome of it. We'll go next slide as well, please. I'll go straight to this. Collaboration keeps ego at bay. Keep who you're serving and the purpose at the core. You can never go wrong this way. You can never go wrong. If I'm like, who am I helping? Is this going to be a guide to their way? Innovation. Exercise the privilege, knowledge, and access you have by living the age you go on. Understanding that the people before you actually are a product of their views and their lives, so they act differently. You can use that to adapt yours. I was going to give you a quote, but I'll skip that one and go to the next one. We can talk about it later. It's a great quote from Obama that talks about in-group biases. And the list you start at the end, I think we've run out of time, so we'll skip that list. Okay, we'll do it real quickly. I'll go fast. Back to your list. If anyone on your list is from the same race as you, please place a mark next to them. If anyone on your list is of the same age, so a 5-year gap above or under, let's say 3 years actually, 5 years is a bit big, put a mark next to the name. If anyone on your list has similar education as you, so it's either tertiary education or non-tertiary education, or is it trade, that's a bit, put a mark there. And that should be it. I'll go next slide. Well, there's more to it, but the whole idea is, as humans, we have a tendency for us to give preferential treatment to members of our own group while neglecting or actually harming out groups. This is people, so mostly, essentially, it should be you'll closely cherish people that are closer to you. In conclusion, thank you for your time tonight.
Ina mana, ina reo, ina rau rangatira tēnā koutou katoa. My name is Liz Malish. I am Te Atiawa Kiponiki, and because I've only got 6 minutes, we're going straight into it. And I'm going to talk to you today about ahu whenua trusts, particularly the two in Wellington, which is Wellington Tents and Palmerston North Māori Reserve. Also going to have another pōtai, and that's the Whauma pōtai. Can we shift? Thank you. And I want to read to you the directive that our tupuna gave to us here in Wellington. I muri nei kia pai ki aku tonga Māori, tonga Pākehā, kia tai aki te haruru o te reo, kia hau I te reinga. In other words, we were absolutely given this wakatoki to live by in Wellington, and that is to look after all people within our takiwā. And as you can see in English, we have to, the importance thing and the value that comes from that is that manaakitanga. That's it in a real world, looking after everybody. And it's a responsibility, not an obligation. Next, please. Okay, just quickly, here's a map that's showing you our pā sites when the New Zealand company who set the journey for colonisation and nationhood for this country arrived in Wellington. Next, please. And that painting is sort of what it looked like very quickly within months as the settlers arrived. And I'll just give you, and if we can move on, please, two things ahu whenua trusts are governed by, aside from all the other rules, like the IRD and ACC and all of those things. But the two special pieces of legislation are the Tūturu Whenua Land Act 1993 and the Māori Reserve Land Amendment Act 1977. And the key is that as Māori business people, that is those ahu whenua trusts all over this country who manage Māori land on behalf of their people, are caught in a legislative framework that nobody else in business has to manage. Because of that, we've learnt a lot. We have learnt how to manage with those rules. We've particularly the Māori Reserve Land Amendment Act, which has not enabled us in a positive way. And there are still issues around that act, and if I had my way, it would be gone tomorrow, but I'm not elected to Parliament, so never mind. So, you know, we've worked on that one. And this is true for all ahu whenua trusts across the land. Can I have the next one, please? Thank you. So just briefly, the Palmerston North Māori Reserve Trust is an ahu whenua trust constituted under Section 244 of Te Ture Whenua Māori Act. And you're going to say, how does that relate to Wellington? Well, it's the fabulous Governor Grey who decided he wanted Wainuiomata, he wanted Lowry Bay, and so he decided he'd take it under proclamation, bought us some land in the heart of Palmerston North, which is actually the home of Rangatani, and left us there. So, and moving on for the next slide, we have the Wellington Tents Trust, which you probably all know about, and that makes sense. Again, constituted under the same act. And we didn't really get to take over our ahu whenua assets until this century. 2003, we started to take control of our own assets. When we first started to advise the Crown in 1987 and 1977, we had a case in front of a Royal Commission. We were allowed to advise, but not to do anything. And we always had to have a trustee looking after us, as they had done since 1839 when the deal with the New Zealand company was set. And in 2003, we finally got through the courts that actually we're quite grown up. Guess what? We're quite educated as well, which is a little frightening. And not only that, we've turned the asset around so that it went from $1 million to $250 million in 2022. That's business, that's managing. If anybody knows how to manage in a stormy sea, it's us. And we still have very difficult legislation to navigate our way through. If we could carry on, thank you. Just saying the difference between that map you saw of pā sites, we now have Te Tātou Utapo in the Hutt Road, Waiwatu Marae at Hutt Section 19, Hikoikoi, which is the head office for the two trusts, Te Raukura, the Whariwaka, and Pipiti Marae. And it's taken a long time even to have those established. Te Tata Otapo in the Hutt Road is the oldest marae in the region, but guess what? We weren't allowed to call it a marae. Under the law at the time, in 1932, when it was built, it was called a hall. If we can go on to the last slide, the 4 po that we manage our Māori business on across all the Ahu Whenua Trusts is Rangatiratanga, Manaakitanga, Wakawanongatanga and Kaitiakitanga. So I think I heard that expression about tangas and tangata, but those are the pillars that we operate and make decisions every day. So it's economic, cultural, social and environmental, and if we don't hit those targets, our owners at our AGM will tell us off. And they do. And currently the issue for all of them is climate change. So if I can go on to conclude with the last one, allied to all of this is FOMA. And as FOMA, the Federation of Māori Authorities, we're the major instruments in this country for Māori business. We're the ones that are the strong part of the $70 billion Māori economy. If you think about settlements, the fiscal envelope, and actually, they're not a huge part of it. It is business that has helped us to get to where we're going with our people. Kia ora.
Tēnā koe Liz, o tira tēnā koutou kei tō tātou pānera I tēnei rā. What a beautiful and profound and broad range of views and whakaaro, and a great way to start us off. So now it's over kia koutou katoa. Ko te ahua nei, ko te ruatakau meneti, kia tātou ki te tukunei nā pātai ki mua nei. You've got about 20 minutes, I think, to send for questions. So please start thinking about what kinds of questions you might like to ask of our panel. Martin Wikaira started us off and put the wero in front of us, about the wero at home before you take on the wero in the world. And then following on from that, Jerome, and that beautiful whakatauki pāhea, I think, but don't just take the tanga, take the tangata. And I think quite a profound thought there. And then thank you, Wakina, for bringing, I think, what I think many of us can understand the parallel of the challenges around this homogeneity of Māoridom versus, the iwi and hapu and all of those narratives, and what you've brought home to us is what you've had to work through in your time too about, a strategy for African communities right across an entire continent, let alone a motu like ours. And then finally, of course, Liz, and really hearing your cry, Liz, around some of those legislative barriers and some of those process and system barriers that you have to work through just to get to the starting point that everyone else starts on. And we often talk about that deficit starting point. So with that, and with all of those wonderful whakaaro, does anyone want to start us off with questions before I pose the first to the panel? Just raise those hands up nice and high. Okay, first question just down the back there. We'll have a microphone across, and I think if we use the microphone on the table, panellists to answer. Kia ora, tēnā koe.
Thank you for bringing us together. It's been good giving priority to the values that we've heard about, but there are two missing for me as a New Zealander. And one is, and they've been important to Māori and they've been important to New Zealand, and one is courage and the other is honesty. And where do they fit in a priority with the values that we have been talking about?
Kapai, I think you'll get a good dose of both now from the panel. And we'll start with Martin. Kia ora, Matua.
Yeah, kia ora mo tēnā. And sorry, didn't mention those because actually they're quite standard and they should be with us anyway. Because if you don't have courage, you'll have the conviction of doing the things that you need to do. But thank you for reminding us how important those continue to be. I think probably if we're going to do all the others, we need the courage of our convictions to do it. And that is something I think that needs to reverberate right around the room. So kia ora mo tēnā.
Kia ora, Martin. courage and truth are something that is absolutely inherent in Te Ao Māori worldview. And if we think about the courage to go into trade, think about the courage to work with our colonisers, and we have, quite frequently, we've married them. So there's a lot of courage, there's a lot of truth. We've been very courageous in supporting this country through massive world wars. We're still there supporting what is happening in Ukraine, and I think about Ron Mark whizzing off there to, you know, even though he's a retired minister, I think there isn't a Māori in the room that's not lacking in courage, nor is it in truth.
Ka pai, that was well spoken. I think courage is synonymous with change, and I didn't talk much about Te Ao Māori worldviews and that because I just feel like I'm not as educated around that format to speak in front of you around that, and so I talked about my kōpapa and what that is. And courage, as an African arriving in New Zealand, that is full stop there, right? Any fundamental change, you have to be brave enough to take that initial step to innovate innovation, and so I think that's just a pillar. Great question, by the way. It should be. I was thinking I was going to get that down to you.
Is that on? Oh, there we go. I think for me, courage comes from, so for myself, it comes from the aspirations of my people, whakatauki, looking at visions and aspirations of the people. That's what basically is the foundation for my self-determination, my courage, and is also what keeps me honest. So I also work for my iwi, Waikato Tainui, so they're always very honest about what they want. And especially as the five mentioned about economies and providing dividends and all that stuff, we get told every day about that. But I guess it's your people. It's those who have passed on and left visions for you. That's what gives you the courage. And in terms of honesty is when your people will be the first person, we're always hardest on our own to say when you need to get back into line. So I think those are there, and that's why I refer to the tangas, because the tangas are not just what was on the presentation, they cover all Māori values. And I also just wanted to acknowledge the point that in terms of Tikanga Māori values and kawa belongs to us as Māori. That's why I was quite purposeful in saying we interweave our values as Māori into the way we approach relationship and relationship building. But kia ora for the pātai.
Kia ora, tēnā koe tēnā pātai me ngā whakamārama o te pānera. Anybody else? Next question, please. Microphone up here to the front. Thank you. And then we'll go next to the back. Tēnā koe.
Kia ora tātou. Me kia ora tātou katoa, e te taiki no Tongalewa. A question for the panel. I just wanted to bring up what Liz, you mentioned around the example of at the AGM where your members will kind of call out, and Ethan also. So my question is around how important is it to have accountability measures to ensure we're on the right path for our people, recognising that one Māori can't speak for all Māori and all of Māoridom. Are there any mechanisms that you can identify that keep our kaimahi or kaitiaki Māori both supported but also accountable?
Kia ora, Ethan. Absolutely, and working to the rules of business, such as having annual general meetings, of reporting back, of providing, fully audited books at the end of a financial year. And in fact, for Ahu Whenua Trust, paying a dividend is huge accountability. But I'll go back to, we're all very, very clear that we have to talk about what we're doing for the environment, what we're doing for our people socially, and how we're supporting them culturally. And we certainly get asked those questions not only at an AGM. You have to be accountable every day. And so we make sure that we're well publicised to our people so they know how to contact us, so that they can ask questions at any time. And I think all trusts and incorporations are very clear about that.
Okay, pātai whakaaro anō, Carl, pātai at the back. Please, tēnā koe.
Kia ora tātou. Make sure the mic's on. Kia kua rangatira ki te mihi atu kia koutou. Just quick pātai from me, and it's a flow on, I suppose, of the previous question too. We heard about, I suppose, those identifying as Māori and MFAT, And I think continuing on from the themes that we've already been talking about today, in your view, what would be the best way, I suppose, to be carrying forward kaupapa Māori as we're outward facing, knowing that identifying as Māori is one thing, being kaupapa Māori is another, being kaupapa iwi, kaupapa hapu, and taking all your tupuna kōrero with you as well is all part of that bigger package that you bring as kaupapa Māori. So from your views, just I suppose, what does that look like going forward in an outward facing world and in the foreign policy space, and how do we bring, I suppose, as you just said, Liz, your accountability to your whānau, your accountability to your hapu, how do we take that framework moving forward in this new international space where we're heading now?
Hapai, tēnā koe, and following we'll have questions up the front here. Tīmata ia koe, Mātu.
Yeah, kia ora, Tredika. You know, the thing about working in the international space, with international and foreign policy, is about actually trying to line up all the different things that you do at home with what you do around the world. And I think the point that you make is actually a really good one. Never, ever take things for granted in terms of what you do. Get out there and talk to people. He kanohi kitea. Make sure you are a face seen, then you're a face known, and then things will happen. But you know what? As you know, Tredika, we're a small fish on a huge pond out there, and so I take my hat off to my colleagues in here, and there's some of them who've come from different parts of the equation, who have actually got out there to do that hard work. It is not easy work, but if you take the convictions of your whānau, your hapu, your iwi with you, and there's a little saying that says, you know, make sure you listen to what your mother told you, then you get that out, and you will move forward. And I think that, it's a really good question, and let's just hope that we learn from a lot of the things that we were doing today to move us to where we need to be going. Liz.
Kia ora, Tredika. Without a doubt, we're trading internationally. Without a doubt, and I'm going to put my FOMA hat on, but the Federation of Māori Authority members are fishers, foresters, beef, lamb, dairy, honey, horticulture. We have to make the business work, reach out. We have to look out, and in fact, probably as an island, we are guilty of sometimes really being like this and being insular. But I actually think that it is absolutely the wrong way to live your life. You have to get above the parapet, you have to look out. And I think particularly Māori traders are very, very good at it. And we've been at it for a very long time. That's why we had the courage in the first place to come to Aotearoa, New Zealand.
My comment on this one is heavily integrated with the whero. There was the challenge of what you do in here, show it out there, or what I was talking about before, you change the world, clean your room. The idea is, what are you doing behind the scenes? And if you embed and live by these values, they'll show face as it goes further. On the ministry or the agency levels, that's a different view, right? It's how are you doing the grassroots work? How are you on the ground? Before embedding te ao Māori in foreign policy, can I see it in local policy? Right? What's it looking down there and this embedded play and as it goes through? But that's, I think that's my view on that.
Ka mai, tēnā koe I te pātai e te tuakane Tredika. And up the front here, next pātai, kia ora.
Kia ora, ko mango kaitipua Jackson tōku ingoa no te iwi o te whānau apanui. E paku pātai tōku, kei hea te wairoatanga I roto I au koutou mahi.
Kei roto I a?
Te wairoatanga I roto I au koutou mahi.
Mahi, o koutou mahi. Kia ora tātou. Ka tīmata pia ki a koe, Ethan. Ka haere pia nei mai.
It's a great pātai, really great pātai. For me, in terms of my mahi, where I get my wairua boost, or where that comes from, is from my kaumātua. So, as I mentioned in my kōrero, I've been born and bred in the Waikato tūturu te kingitanga. So anything kingitanga for me fills that wairua, reminds me of my why, which I think is really important. We've talked about values as a foundation, we've talked about goals and objectives, but the why, and again, talking about the betterment of the people, is you can talk about, you can talk about money, economic, commercial interests, but if it's not going to betterment the people, not just in this time, but in the future generation, you have to ask yourself, why are you doing that? So for me, it's been grounded in my iwi, making sure that I'm strong in my identity, but my why comes from my kaumātua and my tūpuna. Kia ora.
And just before we go to the scientific answers to the question, for those who couldn't grasp the question, it was what is the asking about what the value is in the work that each of the panelists is doing, in particular thinking about Aotearoa and Te Ao Māori. Liz?
Oh, you passed the... yeah, kia ora. I believe that the wairuatanga goes across everything. And in our 4 pillars, in Ahu Whenua Trusts and Incorporations, it includes the word cultural, and that's a very broad term. And there is nothing we do that isn't imbued with our spiritual beliefs, and like Ethan, it's really about our kaumātua, it's about our tūpuna who sit on our shoulders constantly, and we use that to ensure that we don't lose the essence of ourselves, because it is about our essence. Kia ora.
My why. It goes, I actually said it prior, it was raise the living standard of Africans. And again, before I do that in a grand scheme, I got to be able to raise the living standards of my family, raise the living standards of my suburb, raise the living standard of my community, my city, and my New Zealand before doing Africa, essentially. So my why is heavily embedded in a core part of that isn't about me, frankly.
He pātai no tāku kia koe. Wāriu o wairua?
Koe rei rei. Wairuatanga.
E.
Wairuatanga.
Ko te wairuatanga ne. A ko tōku wairuatanga kai rungi tōku nei maunga tongariro. Aha ko te aha. Aha ko kai rota iau I tēnei wā I te tamanatū Aorere. Ana e korau e waraware hia. Ko nā kete, ko nā Māori, ko nā āhuatanga, ke hoki pēnei au ki tērā o tōku maunga, o tōku awa, o tōku moana. Nā tā mea, kai reire ke tōku wairua. Kai te kawe au e rā wairua, ki roto o te manatū Aorere. Nā tā mea, ko tērā wairua, hei awhi no iau I te wā iau e hikoi ana e wea no atu nai te hau kāinga. So I just wanted to say to you that my wairuatanga, my spirituality, is a result of where I come from. I come from the maunga of Tongariro Mountain in the central North Island. I have my moana and my awa to guide me as well. But I have those things that have informed me as to who I am and what I should be doing that has that integrity and honesty we talked about before. And I cannot go past that. Now I'm going to say to you, e hara tēnā he rerekea ki a koutanā o te whānau apunui. Tēnā koe.
Kia ora tātou, tēnā koe I te pātai e te hoa. All right, we'll go to the back there, to Mohi, pātai kia koe. Kia ora.
Kai te mihi atu kia koutou, kai te tātai whakataka tō kōrero puare mai o koutou whakāra. Ka rua reo ki mōhi o mai te kato. Aoi anō, te pātai I ruia mai e au te rātu a kāri a tā wakautua, kia tika. Ki tākui a ngai atu I te whakarongo, tō koutou tōhoi, tō koutou rangatira nā no te pātai I whakautu ki tōna mohio. Engari kei kona koe te matua, ka rui hoki te pātai ki runga I a koutou katoa, I a tātou katoa. A mea atu au I te rātu, kia pakarāpopoto nei au, I te mea kei te ki te atu rā, e tangata o iwi ke atu, o Afrika, tangata anō tō tērā iwi, kei te pai tērā. E o ke ana ki te wā I tērā o ngā wakatauki atu o tātou matua potatau, te wero. Ko tahi te ngira e kuna mai, te miro mā, te miro ero, te miro whero, pango, me te pango, e nui ngā tai. Oi anō, tērā, whakaroa ana ia te tangata ka puta ki tā Hawaii. Whakaroa ana au tēnei me ko matariki tere whakakota ia i a tātou i a Aotearoa nei. Kia pera o ki tā te mahi o te hunga ka haere ki tā Hawaii. I te me kei kona tērā momo iwi, engari hei kanohi mo Aotearoa, koe rā taku pātai te kaua o tā Aotearoa, hei kawe atu e whakaatu ana ki wau. A rei te me e ruku hono au i te whakautu kia kemia ia e tātou, engari. I te me kei konei tērā momo no ngā take, no ngā iwi katoa i roto i Aotearoa. Me pē we te wairua e whakatō nei e Aotearoa i a Aotearoa. Ara ko te tauira. Kei kona tainui, ia tainui ai, kei kona tūhoi, ia tūhoi i tūhoi ai. Nō reira tō Aotearoa, kawa, mō Aotearoa tonu me āna tangata tini katoa, ia tā Aotearoa i Aotearoa ai. Just to put it simply, I wasn't too clear on the answer that was given on the other, I can't remember his name, Chris or Craig, around the past time, that question that I asked around what is Aotearoa's kawa or value set that displays or gives evidence that Aotearoa is Aotearoa because of this kawa, this kawa, this kawa, this tikanga, this tikanga, this tikanga. The example I'm given is a whakatauki that was given by Kingi, po te tau te wero, you only need one needle. That any thread can go through it no matter the colour. In reference to that, for us representing Aotearoa, when we go out, what is Aotearoa's kawa? For the fact of what we just celebrated with Matariki, that gives us evidence that things that we do that create our own tikanga, our own culture, that comes from here, is Aotearoa. So, Matariki was an example. So, the question I was asking, and hopefully it wasn't meant to be challenging, it's really about us understanding, for these people here, how we give evidence that we are Aotearoa and we experience our Aotearoa tanga in a way that we choose to be Aotearoa. What is that? Koira te pātai, and it's not a challenge, it's actually something for us to think about when we go over to represent ourselves. What is that? Koira taku pātai.
Tino pātai, tēnā koe Chief. Martin.
Bogi, you have never ever asked an easy question in your life. But can I just say to you this? E hara tēnei mō nei tātou ki te whakauts. It's not for us to come back to you to say this is what you should be doing. Because that will actually impinge on your mana and everyone else's mana. What I want to say is this. If you are going overseas and representing Aotearoa, then I'm sure you've got a pretty good idea on what that means. It doesn't mean that you're going to go over there and say, oh, I'm from Ngāti Tūwharetoa, but I don't speak for Ngāpuhi. I'm from Ngāpuhi, but I don't speak for others. What it will be is that my whole thinking will be about the dynamics of the geographic positioning that I know is Aotearoa, and that I come from there. And I will go with the mana, I will go, hopefully, with the permission space that's given by my kui and my kraua to actually go and speak on their behalf. Now, hear what I just said. I'm not going to speak on everyone else's behalf, but what I will do is take that rather simple R word, which is about respect. And that is respecting the fact that in this country we have some very, very good, very, very close whanaunga who can do a lot of really good things, and we need to respect that. And that is what Chris and our leadership team and others, we talk about that in our job. We be really, really clear, people. We do not underestimate the huge responsibility that is placed on us to go out there. How we couch that is just making sure that we are respectful of the various views that are here in Aotearoa. And because some of us have whakapapa that go all over the place, we can actually delve into those areas as well. So, Mogi, thank you for that nice, simple question. And to you all, I hope that you all feel that way, and particularly when you leave this, so you can go and spread the word. Ko kaha ke tātou, te whakakotahi ai nei, e raru I te manaakitanga tēnei o tātou tuahuatanga kōrero. Kia ora.
Kia ora, ka pai. And we'll go to one last question, and we do have Ruameniti Nuihue Tui ana kia tātou ia e tēnei wā. Sorry, there was one more behind you, who's got the microphone? Yeah, one quick question. We might just get one answer from the panel. Ka pai.
I'll go a bit easy on you guys this time. So I was born in Singapore and I moved here quite young, and unfortunately my experience in New Zealand has been overwhelmingly Pākehā. And so as a result, I don't fully understand a lot of Māori values. I can come to a conference like this, but ultimately I'm never going to be an expert. And, you know, I could go abroad, but I'm not going to be able to genuinely represent that, at least at the current state that I'm in. So my question is essentially, how can a young person in my position do best by te ao Māori and actually learn and engage in the values that you're all talking about?
Ka pai, tino pātai. Ethan, ka hoa atu kia koe.
I think the simple answer is we don't expect you to be an expert, but we expect you to be guided and to have the initiative to find that expertise and that experience. For me, these Tikanga Māori values are a responsibility for me personally because I am Māori, but I wouldn't transfer that over to you because, say for instance, you work for MFAT. But if I was to work for MFAT or advise MFAT, I would help you and guide you about what is to do right. You've also heard the word hamakawa. For me, that's an obligation a little bit more deeper, so I wouldn't expect you to understand or know what kawa means, as I've always been told that kawa doesn't change, your tikanga can evolve. So for me, as a Māori, I would support you, wouldn't expect you to be an expert, but there are some things that we have to do and must do, and some things that it's our responsibility because we represent Aotearoa, Māori, and other nations within this country.
And just quickly on that one to add, please, you mentioned you're from Singapore and you came here and you're really struggling. Let me tell you, there's a lot of people who were brought up here who did who are on a similar track as well. And I say to them, kia kaha, maybe you should help to teach them or can help us as well. Kia ora.
Ka pai e ka mā. That brings us to the conclusion of our very first panel on values. And firstly, I want to take an opportunity to thank everyone who's shared pātai with us questions this morning. Ka mihi ake ki a koe, Mathew, for all the work in bringing together the conference today in this kōrero that is progressing. And finally, to the panellists, e ngā maunga kore neke neke, e ngā awa whakatere tani whā, whakapiri mai tātou, whakatata mai tātou, kia ora tātou katoa, and enjoy the rest of the day in head. Ka hoa atu kia koe, Julian.
Can I join Mathew in thanking the panellists, Martin, Ethan, Wakina and Liz. Thank you so much for our first panel. Before we go to morning tea, a couple of notes of administration. We would encourage you all to network as much as you can whilst we are all here. So please engage, imbibe, conversate, and enjoy the network experience that's been made available via this conference. And finally, because there are so many of us here, our next session starts at 11:15. So if you can head here at 10 past. Ka we tai hoa ke mo te kua tapahi, ka tahi anō koe ka haere mai, te kauminiti o e wāke mai ana ka noho, rua te kauminiti kua timata, ne? So we'll get you to walk in at 10 past, seated at 11:15, and then we'll start again. Ka pai? Lord, bless our morning tea and bless the hurricanes. Amen.